Welcome to the American Security Council Protecting Our Freedoms podcast. The mission of the American Security Council is to educate and engage American citizens on national security matters, economic security matters, and the need for moral leadership in the United States of America. Please enjoy the podcast.
Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Joy Votrobek, Senior Research Analyst for the American Security Council Foundation. And today we are going to discuss some topics on COVID-19 and how it's affected our education, as well as digging into some other thoughts on thinking, debating, listening, and how our American economy allows for individuals to follow their own dreams. And with me to discuss this today is Dr. Karen Hiltz. She is an education choice advocate, speaker, and author of two books, The Case for Choice, One Size Fits All, An Outdated Education Model for the 21st Century, and The Apple Report, Diary of a Public School Board Member. Not only has Karen served in education, but she's also served in the U.S. Navy. So Dr. Karen Hiltz, it is a pleasure to have you with us today, and thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Karen, you've had quite a career. Could you please give us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. I started out, as you mentioned, in the U.S. Navy at the ripe old age of 18. My goal or objective was to travel the world, and I have been very blessed to do that. That gave me the opportunity to get into a career of federal acquisition and procurement, which means that I contracted or bought things for the federal government. I served as a civilian for the Department of Defense, and then I went over to the civilian side and worked for in policy for U.S. Customs. And then I ended my career at the U.S. Capitol Police. I was the head of procurement there on Capitol Hill. So I went over to the legislative branch. And then I retired and went into the world of education, where I taught at the undergraduate and graduate level. And that's what sparked my interest in becoming a school choice advocate. I believe that parents should be the ultimate authority with regards to the educational environment that best meets the needs of their child. And so therefore that's led me on this path of speaking and writing and encouraging parents to be more engaged and to really delve into what their children are being taught.
Wonderful. Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. My mom was very engaged with me growing up. I was actually homeschooled from 6th grade on. So I think that this right now with the COVID, as we were going to discuss here, has given opportunity to parents to homeschool or do the online learning. Could you expand a little on your thoughts there?
Well, a lot of people have obviously focused on the negative of COVID-19 and, the data, the statistics with regards to cases and deaths and things like that. But in the world of education, I think there are some bright spots that should be identified. And these include, I'll focus on two things. One is that because children have been at home and have had to have access to their learning environment via online, parents have become aware of what their children are actually being taught. And you can go out there and do an internet search and find all kinds of articles with regards to how parents are appalled at some of the social conditioning that is being interjected into the curriculum. And that covers a spectrum of things. The other thing that I think is a very much a bright spot is it's encouraged and grown a new type of educational environment called iPods. Education iPods, and these can be anywhere from a couple of children to a half a dozen to a dozen children. And it's where parents get together and they hire a teacher and they basically homeschool their children, but they hire a teacher to manage their children's education and stuff, just as you would send your child to a classroom. Some people gather in homes. I read an article with regards to a parent who had a business. And so he devoted his conference room to an iPod group that included his children, obviously, so that they could get that education that parents think that their children deserve and need. So those are a couple of bright spots that I think that have really come out of COVID with regards to education.
That's interesting. I didn't know about the iPod. My mom actually was a teacher, and she saw problems back in the 70s and 80s, which is the reason she wanted to homeschool me. So I can only imagine now what you're saying. But that's a very, I like the iPod idea.
Well, I've actually recently read an article, and I can't remember which state it's in. I'm sorry. I should have researched this before I got on here today. But there is a state where a group is forming an iPod consortium, or what I want to call it, a network, an iPod network. So that's so definitely you can see that through those efforts there are definite needs out there.
Mm. Do you think after all the COVID goes away, well, hopefully soon with the vaccine, that this might be here to stay, that parents might see the benefits in this iPod and homeschooling, online learning?
Yes, I actually think that iPods are going to continue to grow because there again, when children go to what I'll call traditional public school, they are subjected to whatever the state imposes. Mm-hmm. And there are things that are being imposed upon children that go against the moral and ethical character of a family, that go against the belief system of a family. And parents are not necessarily willing to put their children back into the environment. The problem that I foresee, and this is going to require probably some type of legislation, is the funding issue. Yeah. Funding is always an issue when you get down to school choice and the options that parents have. So,
and I can imagine as well with the situation now, as I hear, some parents are having to either decide to quit their jobs to stay home with the kids to be able to homeschool or to do the online learning, or some corporations or companies have rearranged things so that parents can work from home. Do you think that's something here to stay as well?
Yes, I do believe that working from home is here to stay. It had actually, when I was working full time in my career, the federal government had started looking at certain positions that could work from a distance or outside of the office. And I was working in Northern Virginia at the time, and they were actually creating these work locations where you could go, instead of commuting into Northern Virginia or the district, then you could go ahead and they created an office environment down in Fredericksburg, Virginia, for example. And to me, this was the start of off-site working or working, distance working or whatever you want to call it. And it has only grown since then. And because of COVID-19, it has expanded, I think, exponentially. And once you open that box, you're not going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle, I'll say. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I do believe that distance working is here to stay, and people are being entrepreneurial with regards to having lost their jobs. They are becoming entrepreneurial and looking for other ways to make a living. So,
and actually, that's another point you had. I'm going to kind of jump ahead a little bit, but if you want to expand a little on the entrepreneurial part of our economy and what makes it so great as far as individuals being able to follow their own dreams.
Well, I think that people need to understand that we are a constitutional republic. We're not a democracy. We're not a oligarchy. We're not a monarchy. We are a constitutional republic, the only one in the world. And that affords us a constitution that gives us the freedoms to economically sustain ourselves. not rely on a government or a monarchy or something like that. And because of those opportunities, we, I think, are unique from an economic security perspective to a degree. Now, obviously, government is intervening, and, you know, they do manage the monetary system in our country, but we still have the freedom to go out there and create and do. And, you know, whether you believe in supply side or demand side economics, you have an opportunity to go out there and create something and either push your product to create that demand or see a need or a niche that needs to be met and then provide that supply. So yes, I think that that we live in the greatest nation on earth as far as I'm concerned, and I have traveled around the world some, and I have lived in other countries, and we are the greatest nation on earth, regardless of the issues that we're going through today.
Having lived in some other countries, then what did you see as far as the difference in people being able to follow their dreams there or entrepreneurship there versus America?
Well, I think that that probably one of the things that baffles me the most. I've lived in the United Kingdom twice and have traveled Europe quite a bit and stuff. And the government is very much ingrained in life over there. And the thing that astounded me the most was the disparity between income and buying a home. Incomes are very low as a general rule in the United Kingdom, but it's amazing how high the price of a home or a flat is with regards to looking at the income. For example, someone might make, some friends of ours, their son makes, you know, $25,000 a year. But in order for him to buy a flat, a one-bedroom, one-bath flat, he needs to, you know, spend, and of course this is around the London area as well, which is a higher economic base there. But in order for him to buy a flat, he's looking at, you know, 250, 300,000 pounds. Now, if you equate that to dollars, which I usually, as a general rule, equate $1.50 to the pound, you know, you're looking at, you know, what is it, 250 and half of 250, you're looking at $375,000 for a one-bedroom, one condo, or one-bedroom, one-bath flat. Now, that may be comparable to New York City or to D.C. or to L.A. or whatever the case might be, but the incomes in New York, D.C., and L.A. are much higher than $25,000 a year for a lot of people. And so that was something that I really thought was, how do people make it over here? It just baffles me. So, but there are a lot of safety nets with regards to the government. So they have a lot of nationalized stuff.
Right, versus what we have. Yeah, that's a big difference when you're only making $25,000 and a one bedroom is $375,000, and I don't know how people even. I would have guessed they were going to live with their families for quite some time at that aspect. Well, and let's move to your other point too. Would you expand a little on our ability to think, debate, and listen?
Well, to me, leadership is a big issue with regards to our country. We lack leadership, from my perspective, because people they have fear. I mean, to me, that's the bottom line. They're afraid to make a decision. And unfortunately, our education system has fostered that fear because of the way education is, what I want to say, it is processed per se. Too many people, you talk to teachers across the country, and you'll hear teachers talk about teaching to the test. That's a common phrase. And what that means is that people get taught information that is relevant to taking a test in order to pass a test, in order to make the scores for their school district sufficient or adequate enough or proficient enough that they don't get on the bad list per se. Mm. And because we're teaching to the test, we are minimizing and in some cases eliminating the ability for students to think, to debate or have a discussion, and to learn the listening skills that are needed to be good leaders and great leaders. So that's what I mean when I talk about, the ability to think, debate, and listen. We just don't have those opportunities within the classroom and within the education environment per se, especially in the K-12 environment, right. To be able to hone those skills and go into the workforce with the skills necessary to become, our future leaders. I mean, we need medical people. We need people in our Congress who are going to make decisions and stand for something. And we just don't produce enough of those skill sets. So.
And it would seem, I don't know if you would agree with me on this, but that our younger generation seems to be almost vilifying America coming out of the school system. In my experience, go ahead. Sorry. What are your thoughts on that? Are you seeing the same thought process?
Well, yes. You see, actually, I had an article shared with me with regards to Nevada high school student sues over leftist indoctrination. And this is out of the Epic Times, which is a pretty reputable publication. Mm-hmm. And it talks about, a student being forced to, discuss things that they're uncomfortable about discussing. And because the student didn't agree with the curriculum, then the student was literally bullied and shamed in front of his peers. Now, what does that do for the learning environment? Mm-hmm. That shuts people up, that makes people not want to defend any position whatsoever, and it shuts down their thinking and listening abilities. So yeah, we have a problem from my perspective with the education system, and that's why I try to speak out as much as I can.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I believe I did read that article, and it carries on from the classroom then into businesses, because you were seeing that with the cancel culture. I guess I would call it more of a group think. If you're not on board with what the current social trending is, you could get canceled. Yep. We recently have just, our Facebook page has been deleted.
You're kidding?
Nope, we have been deleted.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I in some respects, I believe that we're in scary times because of this cancel culture mentality. But I happened to listen to a half a dozen videos yesterday, and they gave me hope. There is I don't know if you've heard of Antonio Sabato, but he's an actor, was in California, spoke at the 2016 convention, or Republican convention, was blacklisted by Hollywood. Mm. What he did over the last 4 years is he came up with a plan, and he has moved to Florida, and he has started a studio called Conflix, C-O-N-F-L-I-X Studios. And the interview that was done with him was very encouraging in that they are going to be doing documentaries, movies, TV shows, etc., that celebrate America, that celebrate the country that we have, that celebrate the positive things in the history, the founding fathers and things of that nature. I think it's going to be a little bit of entertainment as well as educational. I don't think it's going to be totally educational or documentary-like. But that was encouraging.
Wonderful. Yes.
That was very encouraging to hear that. And it's happening right here in Florida, over by Tampa somewhere.
I'm writing this down because I want to check that out. Conflict Studies, you said?
Studios. Conflict Studios, yes. And Antonio Sabato, Sabato, is who is spearheading this, I should say. But he's gathering a group of doers and investors and et cetera, et cetera. So it sounded very positive. I was real pleased to hear that. Another video that I listened to yesterday was from a young lady out of Michigan. She was very despondent with regards to the November 3rd election. And she, was one of these persons that was like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And so because of the skill set she has, which involves communication and media and things of that nature, she reached out to her local Republican executive committee and contacted them, found out how she could get involved. She not only became a member of the committee, but she also now is the communications director for the organization up in Michigan. So her words of encouragement of getting involved, no matter what your skill sets are, they can be used somewhere, somehow to support this constitutional republic that we live in. So
I appreciate that. That's good to know. And I like that there's some hopeful causes out there. We try on Tuesdays to do what we call Spotlight on America, similar to what I think Conflict Studios is doing. Of course, not on the same level, but we usually try to have an article out, something positive on what's going on in America, or what we've done in the past. But Karen,
it's always good to highlight a few positives because we get bombarded with the negatives every day, every hour, every minute. So,
well, we're going to need to wrap it up here, but I appreciate you coming on Protecting Our Freedoms podcast today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to working with ASCF in the future and with you too, Joy.
Thank you. It's a pleasure having you. And don't forget to check out Dr. Karen Hiltz's new books. You can find them at the Vero Beach Books Center or any bookstore online where books are sold. And that was The Case for Choice, One Size Fits All, an outdated education model for the 21st century, and The Apple Report, a diary of public school board member. You can find this podcast on our YouTube by typing in ascf.us. And as I mentioned, we recently have been deleted from Facebook, so we would appreciate you getting our message out there by sharing this podcast with your friends and family. You can also visit our website at www.ascf.us, and we would appreciate your support by donating to our foundation. Thank you, and until next time, please stay safe.